Okay, guys, there are still some people coming, but I think, according to the schedule, we should start. So, welcome to my talk, which is called 5 Years with Symfony. During this talk, I would like to do something that I have been doing previously. So, apart from sharing my experience through building Sylius, which probably some people know me from, I never really shared my experience with Symfony. So what I think about Symfony, what I consider good, bad. There's of course very little of that latter one. There will be probably some things that are not new to some of you. Some will be like small tips that can help you. I also try to include some content that will be relevant to the people or the people who are a bit closer to the business side. So not necessarily CEOs, but I don't know, senior developers, architects, product owners. Hopefully some of these ideas will help you architect better applications. So very quick intro. My name is Paweł Jędrzejewski. I created Sylius project. I also co-founded Netgun company with Michael, my friend who is here. He wears the same t-shirt as me, so we are easy to spot. I'm also helping organize PHP Airs, which is our local meetup in our city. So the story that I will try to tell you about, the story that I will try to tell you today is not as exciting as this one, but it started pretty long time ago. So I was young and stupid, so of course I decided that I need my own PHP framework. That's absolutely a must. What is a PHP developer without his own framework? So I did that. I implemented my own framework. Like the usual story with your own framework, you get quickly annoyed by everything that is broken. You want to work on the application, not on the framework. So I started looking for a solution. I started Googling. So the simplest Google you could make is, how to not waste time on doing basic HTTP processing. And I found, of course, Symfony. I knew Symfony 1.4 already. I never worked with it, but the concept was familiar to me. And I noticed this nice, shiny banner. How many people remember that? Okay, that's quite a lot of people. So this showed up. It was actually, I think, over 5 years ago. I think when I found this image on Web Archive, it was 2010. Symfony resonated with me a lot. I like the ideas. It was like preview released. It was not even in the official Symfony repository. It was on Fabian's fork, and all the development was happening there. So I was excited. I became a living bundle generator bundle. So I started doing bundles, more bundles, more bundles. I regret that to this day, but yeah, it was a fun experience. And I think the system of bundles in Symfony was the thing that really hooked me the most. So lesson 1, don't be always scared of shiny banners. Some, even though they look like advertisements, can have pretty interesting impact on your life, and a few years later you can speak to quite a lot of fellow Symfony developers. But the true lesson is a very simple one. Reuse whatever you can. Really. I learned this hard way because initially, as I was an experienced developer, my adventure with Symfony started from reinventing a lot of things. I wanted to have as many bundles as possible. And this is really wrong. And it's wrong not only from technical perspective. For me, it's more of a life question whether I want to spend time on the things that I do best, or whether I want to try to solve things that are solved already. So my first message to you guys is always spend a decent amount of effort on researching whether there is an existing bundle already, a library, or maybe there is even a person with the same problem and you can work together before starting doing something yourself. That was my first project on Symfony, my first commercial project on Symfony. It's still alive, surprisingly. I don't even want to know how. But it was fun. It was Symfony I think it was already Symfony 2.0, a couple of loose bundles tied together. A lot of fun. Here is a completely non-technical lesson that I learned during this project. Websites for friends and family do not magically maintain and fix themselves. So before you say yes to a favor, think about it twice if you really have time to do it. My second project was quite interesting. It was a Groupon-like website, also loosely coupled bundles tied together in a Symfony app. We made the simplest mistake you can make with Symfony, in my opinion, and a lot of people still do that, is you rarely need to create a bundle. I know that there are different opinions, and during this talk I will tell you things that you may disagree with, but yeah, that's just my opinion, my recommendation from the experience. So don't use bundles as namespaces. We already have Symfony best practices saying that you should have only one app bundle, but in reality, as I do some consulting or training work, I still see people who, on their custom applications for customers, they still try to build them from bundles. But what is a bundle? This is the simplest definition that you can find on the Symfony website. It's a set of files that implements a single feature. So look at your Symfony application and ask yourself, can I take this bundle, put it in another app, and have this feature implemented with ease, integrated with ease into the application? If not, then you're probably using bundles as namespaces. I know it's tempting because that's the natural system of modules that Symfony provides, but you will end up with issues like, where should I put this entity? Whether it's, I don't know, advertising bundle or core bundle or shop bundle or whatever. Don't do that. You actually, in some cases, you wouldn't even need the app bundle. So always think twice before creating a bundle. In 95% of cases, I would say you need just an app bundle. So what is a good bundle? This is one example quite special for me because I was working on a project with Michael. It was this category of projects like emergency projects. So, hey guys, we have trouble with our application. In 10 days, there is a huge campaign worth of hundreds of thousands of dollars going live in big magazines and so on, and our application is completely not working. So we need to integrate order confirmation. So this bundle, even though it's not a very popular bundle, there are no stars visible, but I think it has less than 100 stars. But this single bundle saved this campaign because we took it and we implemented the whole automated order confirmation in a matter of 1 or 2 days. So this is a good example of bundle that can save you a lot of time and save you a lot of effort. So if you can create a bundle like that, that's great, do it, but don't over-engineer your projects. And when we are at the topic of bundles, is anyone still using this website? Yeah, and that's sad, I think, because packages is great, and we all probably use it to find the appropriate bundle. But I think Symfony could use at least a simplest type of bundles catalog, where you would have like categories or something like that, where we could, as developers, maybe recommend or do something. And this, of course, is not a feature request from Symfony, but maybe we as community can organize something to have a thing like this. And while preparing this talk, I looked at the source code of KNP bundles. So how many people remember this file, this deps file? This is pre-composer. There was no composer back in the day, so it was quite fun to specify everything manually and have this funny deps log file. Okay, somewhere after working on KNP bundles, and because if you couldn't find your bundle on KNP bundles at some point, that was my fault because I implemented the search. But I've been upgrading Symfony project pretty much since the very beginning, and I have few thoughts about it. Yeah, we upgraded as Sylius project and as commercial projects, we upgraded from pretty much every version. 2.0, 2.1, if I remember correctly, was quite easy. 2.1, 2.3 was quite hard because of the forms. 2.3 to 2.8 was smooth. And the latest upgrade that we did, actually last week, was quite hard, but it was our fault. And I would like to share a few things that we have learned during that upgrade about what to do and not to do with Symfony. I think if you ever come to a situation in your company where they don't really want to invest in upgrading Symfony, I think there's a bigger problem. Because Symfony is really easy to upgrade. If you use it correctly, the community puts a huge effort in the upgrade. So if you really can't figure out how to get a budget or time to upgrade, there is something bigger going on than just not being able to upgrade. And if you need reasons to upgrade, this is some statistics from our recent upgrade to Symfony 3.0. So we have these are stats for our test suite, and we have around close to 900 BHAT scenarios running with the database, and this is about 9,000 steps. So each step is either creating something in the database or opening the website through a Symfony driver. So the memory is the most significant improvement compared to previous versions. It's a huge drop for us. I know that one of the reasons is hidden in this issue here. It was about form option that by default was holding an exception, and exceptions hold stack traces, and stack traces can get pretty big. So this is one of the biggest reasons behind this upgrade, but the speed and memory consuming improvements are huge. So this is definitely a reason to upgrade. Another thing I learned when working with Symfony on many projects is be careful with sub-requests. They're great and you should use them, but I remember first projects that went really wrong because of them. Like, it's tempting to render a lot of them, and you can do that if you cache them properly. But if you're not using cache, sub-requests are a good starting point. You shouldn't optimize beforehand. You shouldn't do premature optimization. But definitely it's worth keeping an eye on your profiler when you're using sub-requests. They're great for rendering part of the website, but maybe not list of things and so on, because this can get a bit nasty. And it also becomes a bit problematic with debugging. As we are working on our release, we found this little issue that in our test environment, that's probably some issue with configuration, but some exceptions in sub-request were thrown silently, so we couldn't discover the issue until some further debugging. So be careful with that. But you can use them for many things, and what I used in the past a lot is rendering part of the things, like part of the website with some options, because you don't always need to create, for example, 2 separate controllers to render a list of the same thing twice, but looking a bit differently. You can totally pass a template. Even Symfony has the built-in template controller in Framework Bundle that specifies the template in the routing. So if you have, let's say, a list of reviews, list of people, and you want to display a vertical list on the right and horizontal list in the bottom of the page, just configure the templates or whatever parameters you need in the routing and use parcels for that. That's very useful. Yeah, you can easily access them, and it's a good boost for productivity. You don't have the duplication. Maintaining double amount of controllers is quite annoying. We had, in previous versions of Sylius, for example, we had both front-end and back-end controllers, and that was a huge amount of code, where in reality the difference was either the template or maybe the form. You can totally configure that per route. During my adventure with Sylius, I also worked on some migrations, and if you are looking at a migration from legacy, definitely do it step by step. Doing it all at once may seem tempting because you're like, okay, I just migrate to Symfony, I rewrite the whole thing, and all my problems are solved. Remember that during the migration phase, the code that we are the new code that you are writing will also become a legacy. You get kind of legacy code and technical debt from the very first hours of development. So always do it step by step, and think about every migration also from the business side, because a lot of people are like, a lot of developers are entirely focused on the technical aspect. Yeah, migration sounds great. It will be a lot of fun. I will be able to use new tools, be more productive, and so on. But in many cases, I've been working on migration from like 14-year-old legacy code bases that started with PHP 4. So in many cases, it's not worth it. And you should be aware of it as a developer. It's not worth it to migrate everything. Like rewriting a whole application that already works in production is a huge effort. It takes sometimes years. And we know that software projects that take years are quite problematic. So there are simple ways, and there are whole presentations about migrating from legacy. There are also great articles and tools, but the simplest one is wrapping your legacy app inside, wrapping your legacy app in, with Symfony. So basically, you have a Symfony application that fallbacks with, this is a very simple example. I will show you in a second a good article about that. But it basically fallbacks to legacy application. And you can develop new things with Symfony Stack. You can be more productive. You can use bundles, latest tools, and so on, testing. But for the stuff that already works, I would say for the stuff that works correctly and doesn't have to change, just cover it with tests. For the stuff that you need to refactor because there is some business like related changes and it needs to, as always, affect the software, cover it with tests and refactor only the part that is causing problems. Don't do full rewrites. That's pretty expensive and stressful for you as developers. So you are a strong voice in the team. Maybe not in every team. We all had at some point maybe annoying managers, but you are a strong voice. If you think about what I just said and you say, okay, maybe let's go smart about this migration. Maybe let's not go like full rewrite mode. Then I think you will save yourself a lot of stress and work. There's a great article that actually provides some out-of-the-box tools for migrating from Kyodo. You can check it out. It was a huge inspiration for me in some cases. Okay, a few words about forms. Forms are my favorite component from Symfony. Who likes Symfony Forms? Okay, a lot of people, but I know that for some they are causing some headaches, but that's not because they're bad, it's because the processing of forms is quite hard. Okay, so first Symfony Forms. This was in the 2.0 preview release. We had a simple form class, text fields, it was fun. Then we had the second system, the second version of the system, which introduced the types. It was good, I would say very good and a huge step forward. Still some problems. We introduced options resolver, which was a very helpful thing. It evolved in recent versions of Symfony as well. And finally, we have the class text types. And I'll be honest with you, we had plenty of, that's throwback to my slide about upgrading to 3.0. It was problematic for us because we misused Symfony Forms. We were trying to do too much and maybe too fancy with these forms. We had form types generated in our service extensions and configuration files. So in previous versions of Symfony, you could use names for forms, so we generated that name. So instead of having 20 form types, we had one class and generated 20 services. This was fun in the very beginning, but then it became quite problematic. So we were upgrading to Symfony 3.0, and at first look, I was like, why the names are gone? But after upgrading and looking how our new forms look, I think it was a very good step. Lesson number 7, appreciate Symfony Forms. I'm not sure if this is documented. If it is, it's a bit hidden, but this can help you in some cases. It allows you to swap the form data. Is it a hacky hack? Sometimes, but I wish I found that earlier. I remember a case, that's why I included in this talk, where we were working on some quite advanced form, and we needed to swap the data on specific conditions. This can help you. I hope you don't deprecate it, but yeah. So my advice for you when working forms, in the new version, create a new form type whenever you need. They're quite cheap. Of course, don't create a form type just to maybe modify, to add one field or something like that. You have type extensions for that. But we have been trying on many projects and on Sylius itself to build like generic forms. This is difficult, and you can realize how difficult it is by just looking at Symfony. Symfony has generic form types, and it's crazy amount of effort to make them work for all these cases that we as consumers of Symfony do. So avoid super generic types. I would rather have 2 form types which have a bit different, maybe subscribers, data transformers, than creating one form type with plenty of options. It's usually causing a lot of trouble. Another lesson is about CRUDs. I love CRUDs. I really like the concept of CRUD. It's simple. A lot of my applications are CRUDish, but it can cause some trouble. I don't really like admin generators. Probably a lot of you use them. They're great. I use them for prototyping. I've been migrating some projects from admin generators. I think the problem with them is we mostly do custom applications with Symfony. So they are not that simple. And admin generators make a lot of assumptions. So you kind of lock yourself if you depend fully on an admin generator. I do not recommend that. I think they are great projects and very useful in many cases, but I would say this is too many assumptions. Go with something simpler. CRUD is very easy to implement in Symfony. If your application is just about managing some rows in the database, then yeah, you can totally go ahead and use an admin generator. But if there comes some bit of logic, then it can be a too big assumption. I've been also integrating Symfony apps, and this is super interesting. I had the pleasure to work on 3 different types of integration. APIs, this one is pretty much standard way of integrating apps. If they have good APIs, they can integrate basic stuff. Single kernel, this is something I'll talk about in a minute, and stack PHP, which probably most of you heard about, like stacking HTTP kernel interfaces. But I would like to talk a bit about integrating through API. Nothing special here because we just talk. One API talks to another, Akeneo consumes data from us, we send some information to them maybe. It's simple, but I would like to take a minute to appreciate how Symfony is great for a community in a sense where we have multiple Symfony projects that do quite different things, And as developers, even though we work with API, we can appreciate the fact that it's the same foundation. If something is not working as expected, you know where to look. You know, even finding logs is as simple as looking to the same folder you're used to. So integrating Symfony to apps through APIs is very nice and very easy thanks to the common foundation. And I think that's the whole point of reusing things. A quick tip, if you're working with APIs, that's quite obvious, but I know, and that was the case for me, I work with plenty of projects, but then API projects started, and IDs are not enough. You will have desynchronization of data if you use whatever kind of microservice architecture. IDs are not enough and will cause you trouble. So go with unique codes that you can refer. We had several Symfony applications in a project that talked through API. This is where I learned this hard way. And we had to do very nasty thing, which is dropping the database in order to regenerate the same IDs so that everything is synced. That's obviously stupid. Okay, so what else is cool with Symfony being a bundle-based application is that you can totally put two Symfony applications in a single kernel. And that's what we are doing with, that's what Netgun and Lockastic companies are doing with Easy and Sylius. It's an exciting use case of Symfony that actually proves that the architecture is very extendable. Standard Symfony project, I'm pretty sure it's based on Symfony standard. We have Easy Publish kernel. In the composer, we have Sylius, we have Netgun Bundle, which is a glue between them. And this is a single Symfony application that shares the commands, shares templates, so you can include and render templates from every application. They can share the sessions, they can work, the security layer can work together. So this is definitely something worth knowing when you develop your own application. I'm not saying that you should contain your application in a bundle upfront. Don't do that because that's design upfront is always bad. Most likely you will not need. But if you follow good practices, if you keep your code base simple, if you follow Symfony best practices, if you have one app bundle, nice structure of routing, some common configuration, you can easily contain an entire application in a bundle and include it, just like here, in other apps. This is how the latest version of Sylius is built, for example, where the B2C Shop interface is just one bundle that can be included and excluded. If we remove these 3 lines, so we don't import the config, we don't import the routing, and we remove the bundle from the kernel, the shop is entirely gone. There's nothing related to it. So you can totally do that with your application. Just be smart about it and don't do it upfront, because this will be classic over-engineering. So Symfony architecture allows you to integrate projects, to plug in bundles into your existing projects, or we had cases where there is a huge Symfony app working already for about 2 years. They need some functionality, and entire other Symfony application can be plugged in thanks to this kind of architecture. So I think it's very exciting and really a new level of integration for web applications with Symfony architecture. One note related to CRUDs. There is a talk today about state machines, so I'm not going to tell you any details, but I learned during my work that state machines are a great concept that can be very useful for you if you struggle with how to organize your business logic. Of course, there are new concepts, maybe not that new, but growing concepts in Symfony community with command buses, CQRS, event storming, and so on. This is all awesome, and I hope to try it out on future versions of my projects. But state machine is a really simple concept. That every application that you probably wrote in your career could use and simplify the handling of even simplest business logic like enable, disable. But like I said, there is a talk about that from Tobias, so check it out, and you will learn more about state machines. A quick info for those of you who are interested in Sylius release. After with the help of 3,500 code contributors, crazy amount of commits and downloads, we are finally coming close to the beta release. So stay tuned on the Twitter, and if you want to talk about Sylius or Symfony in general, you can just find the guys with these t-shirts. I have one more thing to talk about, and this is, I think, one of the biggest lessons for me that is not technical. I hope you will find it interesting because you are part of a huge open source community and we are growing. More and more projects are adopting Symfony. So there is much more open source work to do, to participate in. But I have a reflection that I wanted to share with you that sometimes we're a bit too busy doing open source itself, explaining how to contribute to specific projects and so on. But I think we are spending not enough time explaining newcomers how to run their own projects. I was following Symfony, and this is a great example, and other projects as well, but I think there is not enough knowledge sharing in the community about how to be a good maintainer, how to plan your product, your open source product, because it may be a surprise for many of you, but every single open source repository that you set up on GitHub has a product inside. It's not a product that you will sell for money, but it's a product that has consumers, that should have some kind of product backlog, planning, and so on. I learned this on hard way on a big project, but I think the same rules apply to every open source library that you may implement. We focus strong on the technical aspects. We focus on the code, fixing bugs, and so on, but we forget to treat our open source library as a product. This is some random idea that I came up with actually today morning, but I wanted to throw this idea into the crowd and see what happens. Maybe we can have some interesting discussions. For those of you who are kind of interested in the business part of software, you probably heard about the Lean Canvas and so on. Lean Canvas is a tool that you use for iterating on your product. And I think that this kind of strategy is applicable even to the smallest library, because it solves some problem with a solution, of course. It has some consumers, customers, developers. It needs to be promoted, because I've seen people who spent like 2 years. There was a guy who spent about 2 or 3 years, that was what he said, building a framework, not telling anyone. And he posted it somewhere online and said, this is competition to Symfony and Zen framework. And this framework, from what I remember, didn't have any testing or anything like that. So it was far, far from being a competition to huge communities. So we need some channels to tell people about your product. If you like scientific approach, you should measure everything that you do with your open source product. It's a product. It has some downloads. It has some visits on the website. You should always consider these factors. While you don't really earn money with open source directly, you have plenty of benefits. So it's worth thinking about these benefits. Like, this process could be part of the thinking whether I should create my own library, my own bundle, or whether I should work with someone else. Because when you sit down and look at things like that, you realize that, well, there are a lot of benefits. There are also costs. With a library, there is not much money involved, because you can host it for free on GitHub, you can promote it for free on Twitter, and so on. But there is time. You need to spend time to answer committee members, to answer support requests on emails, You need to maintain, bug fix the library and so on, so there's plenty of costs involved. And like my final message, if we can call it from this talk, would be think about your open source libraries as products, because this is what they are. Thank you so much for listening. I would be happy to hear some feedback from you. If you have any questions, that's the time to ask. I will be also around the conference today and tomorrow, so just look for me, and I'll be happy to talk with everyone, especially if you have some thoughts about Symfony and Sylius in general. So, thank you. Any questions?